Thank you for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock.
Steve Singer grew up in a suburb of St. Louis. He started playing drums at 8 years old and later became the drummer in the U City High School Jazz Band. Musicians like Buddy Rich, Max Roach, Grady Tate, Mel Lewis, Elvin Jones, and Tony Williams influenced Steve's drumming. He moved to New York City and started subbing on Broadway shows. He learned about an opening for a tour of Grease, the hit musical at the time, and landed the gig. Since that time, he's played in over 20 Broadway shows and their tours. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Singer. Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My name is Clayton Craddock, and today my guest is Steve Singer from St. Louis, Missouri.
That's right.
What brings you to New York from St. Louis?
I drove. No. Well, I had a lot of friends in college that were from New York, and I went to this art school, Webster College, which is a small art school in Webster Groves, which is a suburb of St. Louis. And a lot of actors and musicians, and a lot of them were from New York. And so I went to New York a lot and to visit, because these are my friends, basically my college friends, and I liked it. I mean, at the time I was playing drums still, and I had been playing drums for quite a while. And I had become aware of studio drummers. And I said, well, that would be a great thing to do, because I played in a jazz band in St. Louis, and I played in a couple rock bands, but there was really no serious work that could make any money, that could really lead to anything except parties and weddings. And I'd done a little bit of that, but I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was studying with a guy with the St. Louis Symphony, the mallet percussionist, John Cassica, with the St. Louis Symphony, who actually used to room with Ben Herman. You know Ben Herman?
I don't.
He's a percussionist, and he's still around now here. So he liked my playing, and we really just worked on technique. And he was a very serious guy, a very nice guy, but very, very like a fanatic about music. He said he wasn't sure if he wanted to be a percussionist or a professional bowler, because he was like so in love with both of those things. But you would know this is the kind of guy, whatever he wanted to do, he would do it to kill it. I mean, he was just like, two mallets in his hand. But so I'd play drums, and he would teach me drums, and sometimes he would just play congas, and he would just try to throw me off with odd meters. And he liked my playing, and he said it was strong, and he liked how definitely I played. And he said, you would love New York, and I think you would do well there. I said, well, thanks, that's great. And then I was a photo major. I was a media major, and with a concentration in photography at the same college. So I was taking private lessons from John Cassica as a study, independent study. But I was studying photography because I'd been doing that since I was like in junior high school as well. And the guy who was the head of the media and photography department, he got me the first college intern at the International Center of Photography in New York. So I just lucked out. I mean, I was just a lot of things luckily just happened in the right way. So I got this internship to be an intern at the International Center of Photography. I did that my last year of college, and it was such a liberal arts school. You could write it up. I mean, they sent me, and I had to find an apartment and all that. And I lived with some friends of mine for a while. But I wrote that up as the first semester. The second semester, I started studying with another drum teacher. I looked up in the Village Voice, guy drum lessons, Broadway drummer lessons, and he was great. And he was doing the show Annie at the time, the original Annie.
What year was
on
that?
Broadway. When?
Mm-hmm.
This is like 70. I got to New York in 76. And I didn't really start doing anything until 77. Like I said, I finished my last year I finished my last year of college in New York with these two independent studies. And he was the drummer in Annie. And so he played and he checked me. He said, he checked me with a metronome and he would play for some tunes and he would check my reading. And I had learned to read and play in the school orchestra in middle school or junior high, we call it in the Midwest. I played snare drum, and there were like two drummers. We were like the two good drummers in the show in the school. And the good drum, the guy who was ahead of me, I was number two. He played bass drum and I played cymbals, and it was like nothing. But we played snare drum and stuff like that. But we learned how to read music in junior high and high school. We went on, and there was a jazz band in high school too, and I was the drummer in that too.
What was the first thing that made you say, you know what, I like to play drums?
I have two older brothers, so when I was about 6, I guess, so my brothers were 12, and they were like insane with the Temptations, seriously, and all of Motown. And then like later on, maybe when I was 7, 8 or something, I actually went to a Motown review. They took me, and it's like people were they were going crazy. They were dancing all over the place. I'm going like, this is unbelievable. And so then the Beatles came out, and that was just, we all went nuts for that. And I would just always watch the drummer. And my dad always knew. And I had started to play drums in school, in the orchestra, and learned to read and stuff. And so of course then I started badgering my dad to get me a drum, which of course he didn't, want to do. But he eventually gave in and got me this little Kent drum set, Blue Sparkle. That sort of started me on it. And then my dad knew how much I liked it. Like whenever Buddy Rich would be on Johnny Carson, he would either wake me up or let me stay up. And he would say, "Steve, Buddy Rich." So he sort of was interested in that too. He liked that I liked that. And he didn't know, of course, he didn't think I'd get anywhere with it. I was playing in a couple little bands. I was like 13. I was playing in bands. I had to get permission to leave my grammar school to do a dance at the junior high school, at the middle school. Then, of course, I badgered my dad to get me a Ludwig set because that's what Ringo had. I had it, and he bought me one. I got a red Sparkle, just a 4-piece, 22-inch bass drum, and I think a 12 and a 14-inch floor tom, red Sparkle. But they had the original Ludwig logo on the front, and man, I thought I was really happening then.
You still have that drum set?
No. Believe me, I wish I would. You look at them on eBay now, and they're very expensive.
True. Did you eventually form an original group, or were you just playing in cover bands around town? Like, what was the scene like?
We had a band, pretty much one band. I mean, we just played, Beatles songs and Stone songs and all that stuff. The Monkees, we played stuff like, all that stuff.
Did you see yourself being a rock star like the Beatles or the Stones, or did you just want to play any kind of music? And was it more of a hobby, or was it something that you were passionate about and you said, I want to be a professional musician?
Well, at 13, I don't know. I mean, I don't really recall thinking that, but I know I really liked it. I mean, of course I wanted to do what everybody, we all wanted to be the Beatles then, because it was such a positive thing that they did. They sang songs about love and happiness and sunshine and stuff. And it was just so great. And it was such beautiful music. And it was just so unique. And people said, well, gee, maybe, I'm sure deep down I did think, well, maybe I could do that too. But I don't think that was my main thing. I just loved to play.
So what was your focus in high school? Was it more academic, or was it revolving around music? And did you see yourself going into music school, or did you have another path, or did you have goals back then? I really wanted to go into music school. And I was taking pictures by then too, like in junior high. One of the other drummers, there were 3 or 4 drummers. One of the other guys in high school, he had all these cameras. And I said, that's cool. I mean, how does that work? I mean, these are old, like Minolta, single lens reflex film cameras, regular cameras back then. And he sort of taught me about that stuff. And I started getting into that. So you had dual interests, drumming and photography, and you still do to this day.
Yeah, I always have. I was shooting for the junior high school paper, and for the high school paper, I was the photo editor.
And you said you went to school for photography and for music? I can't remember exactly what you said.
No, in college, I was a photo major.
Ah, okay.
But it was a media major with a concentration in photography. That's what it was called. But I took the private lessons with John Cassica of the St. Louis Symphony, which is a great symphony. But like I said, and then after that semester, I started studying with Michael Epstein, the guy at Annie, and I started to concentrate more on playing.
Mike Epstein.
Yeah.
That is one of the guys that was part of the Broadway Drummers Roundtable in 1981 in August in Modern Drummer. There was Mike Epstein, Dorian McGee,
right?
John Redsecker, and Paul Pizzuti. And that's the reason why I started this podcast. It was like, there's nobody doing that right now, so why don't I do it?
Oh, I never saw them. Uh-huh.
And I'm glad I got a chance to speak with Paul Pizzuti. Great guy to talk to, and I'm working on getting John Redsecker on. But it's interesting you mentioned, what's his name again? Mike
Epstein.
Mike Epstein.
Yeah.
So he was at Annie.
Yeah, he played Annie for like a long time. It went on for 5-6 years.
Now, how did you meet him, and how did you get?
Well, like I said, he had an ad in the Village Voice giving lessons because I didn't know anybody. I mean, I had friends who lived in New York, but I didn't know anybody in music. So I figured, well, I'll take some lessons, thinking maybe that would lead to something, and it did. So I took lessons with him. He knew I could read. He worked on my reading. He worked on my lining up with a click, which I had never really done. I mean, my time was pretty good, But I'm 21 at this point, 21, 22. I forgot to mention, I also, after studying with Michael Epstein, I started studying with Sonny Igoe. And that was some more serious study. Not that Michael was great. But Sonny made me start at the beginning. I mean, he had 2 drum sets and 2 chairs with pads. And that was a great thing. And he gave me all these great warm-ups that I still do to this day. I just wanted to sort of go into that because that was some real serious New York drum teaching. He had this place with Harry Adler. I think Henry Adler for years. People say I didn't know him, but he was on 46th Street, just a couple blocks from Manny's, and he played for the Carol Burnett show. He used to sub for the guy on the Ed Sullivan show. That was something I wanted to be sure and mention that he was a great teacher, and he had so much experience. We worked on time, we worked on technique, and he told me though, never have your thumb up on the ride cymbal. He always do this way. And then I see Peter Erskine, and I saw something on Peter Erskine. He says, no, you don't need this way, your thumb up, and that is more comfortable.
So when you were taking lessons with Mike Epstein, did he teach you anything about playing shows?
Well, he actually got me my first job. He didn't yet, but he said they're looking for a drummer to replace the drummer they have on the road with Grease. And Grease was there a long time, like 12, 15 years or something like that. And I'm thinking they need someone to replace somebody playing Grease, because I knew that was a very simple thing. But they said, yeah. They said, I said, you think I could do that? Because I didn't have any idea. I mean, because I didn't grow up, we didn't grow up at my house listening to Broadway show records and things like that. I mean, I never knew that stuff. I mean, I knew the stuff that were movies, West Side Story maybe, and the funny thing happened on the way to the Forum that I know were based on Broadway things, but we never put those records on at home. Well, we never really listened to that stuff. I knew nothing about that. I said, do you think I could do it? He said, oh, yeah. He said, of course you could do it. Yeah, it'd be a breeze for you. I said, okay. So he gave my name to the guy who's the drummer at Grease, and I met with him, and I had to meet with him in the morning and play for him to see how I could play, and he showed me some of the music. And he said, yeah, I think you'll be fine. And I had to play the opening number of Grease in a pit where we were half out of the water. You know what I mean? They could still see us. They could see us. Like the people are right there. You know what I mean? So And it was just ba ba da ba da ba ba da ba da ba ba da ba da ba ba. That's all it was. The first thing, but still, there's a dialogue, and the guy goes, 1, 2. He told me what I had to do, and he gave me the music. And I'm sitting next to him. Here, he's sitting next to me, and I'm getting ready, and the lights go down, and I am just sweating. I've never done this before in my life, and I have to play this in front of the audience. So I had to play the first number as my audition for the conductor to see if I'd be okay to go out.
Right. So you just did one song, or did you do the whole show?
Yeah, that was enough. Yeah. But I'm sitting there, and the guy's sitting next to me. I said, "Man, I'm really nervous." He goes, "He says you don't look it." I guess I was good at hiding it back then, but I said, "Oh no." So he goes, "It's a speech at the Rydell High School. It's at the prom or the graduation," and they say, "And all the I don't forget what the line was, and all the people that we've loved before." And he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's. And they go and they all start dancing. Suddenly it's the prom, and I have to play this, this boom chicka and it's like, and I survived it. And then I flew to Canada. I flew into Hamilton, Ontario. The conductor and the band met me at the airport, and I had shipped my drums there. I guess I don't remember about that, how that happened. And suddenly I'm on tour with Grease. I'm 22.
That's great.
It was great. It was a riot. They were all nice. They were all funny people, and it was fun. And it was it was really easy. And there's a hand jive thing, dump, 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 and it even had a click at the time too, which I had never experienced. It was great. I did that for, a long time. It was a great time. And then having subbed it, having done the tour, I could sub on Broadway. So that was how I got started. I started subbing on shows, and then I met other people. And
what shows were you subbing on back in the late 70s on Broadway?
Well, I started with Grease, and then I'm still studying with Michael Epstein. He said, "Do you want to sub for me?" I said, "Again, do you think that's something I could handle?" Because I have nothing, I have no guidelines to go by. He says, "Sure. It's really easy. It's nothing." Shows were easier back then, too. They were really very basic and simple. And it wasn't a whole lot of intricate things and ins and outs. So he said, "Sure." So this was the first thing that I had done, drum set in an orchestra. I had never, with strings. There was like one violin, I think. Maybe a cello, Annie. But it was 20s music, and I found I liked any stuff that had a sort of a certain era feel of excitement. Like if it was the 50s with Grease, or it was Annie in the 20s and 30s. If there was some sort of a groove or play like Charleston music or something like that, that's what I could understand. There were some shows that I looked at, I said, "I don't get this at all," and I would pass because I knew I probably wouldn't do very well. But I was doing that, so I was subbing at Grease, I was subbing at Annie, and at one point I was subbing 3 or 4 shows at once. Not soon after. Michael Keller, I used to sub for Michael Keller a lot, and because he was my neighbor. And when I first moved to New York, I said, "Well, what do I do about playing drums in the apartment? Because that's not going to happen. That's going to be an issue." He says, "Well, most guys have." So I asked Epstein. Epstein really helped me understand New York and how drums work in New York. He said, "Well, most guys get a studio with other people, and they keep their stuff there where you can practice and store your equipment. And it's in Midtown, so it's sort of like central to most things, the gig." So I did that. So the first thing I did was I was with Michael Keller, John Retziker, Jim Saporito, and Pizzuti, I believe, and maybe another percussionist who has long since moved away. I can't think of his name right now. It's right on 50th and 7th. There used to be a right around the corner from that little deli now. up the stairs, there was a pizza place there, and they had that really nice pizza that had that sort of corn crust, and so we were right above that. And a lot of trombonists and horn guys, famous horn guys, had like little studios. They could go practice and go just maybe take a nap in between gigs and stuff. But I did that for a long time and got to meet Pizzuti and Redsecker and Keller. So then I started subbing for Keller they're playing our song, which was Lucy Arnaz and Robert Klein. And that was a real easy sort of a mock pop thing, you know? I mean, things that were like pop and rock and in that era, simple music, I could do that stuff. I mean, I wasn't a classical guy by any means, but that's the way things were there. They were easy. And then after they're playing our song, I started subbing on for Keller on The Goodbye Girl, same kind of thing. And, just like that, I've done it. So then I would do the tours of things. I didn't tour with Annie. Then I did a tour they're playing our song with Lucy Arnaz and her husband, Lawrence Luckenbill. And we got along really well at a lot of rehearsals, and she was always, we were always cracking jokes and stuff. And so I was cracking jokes, of course, with her, and she liked that, and we got to be very good friends. I did a tour with Lucy Arnaz, and I started doing her cabaret act around New York. And that's what I mostly did. I didn't know really what else to do, and I just kept falling into these things, which, were really nice. And I would do tours, and then I would sub on that show on Broadway. And trying to think what else. Started subbing for John Redsecker, too. He did the show Barnum about, obviously Barnum. And that was I subbed on that, and that was fun, too. That was just like, bum, bum, bum. It was Cy Coleman, though. It was very well-written stuff, but it was very simple, like circusy music, and there was some ballads and some triplets, some three. And I did very well with that. They liked me there. And then I did that first national tour, and I had never done a first national tour. So then that was a much better tour than the Grease tour. This was a big deal. We went to LA. We went to all these big cities. It was a big deal. It was good. But then the principals didn't really, they didn't do well ticket-wise. So they shut it down. And then they started it back up again with the original leads, which were Jim Dale and Glenn Close. And that did really well. Actually, that's when we went to the bigger cities, to LA. We played the Pantages in LA. And I did a small tour, like I said, with playing our song. It's all a big blur. But I would do things where I would sub it on Broadway, and I would do maybe 2 other tours of it. It would or vice versa. I would do a tour, and then I would start subbing.
Tell me about the differences between the way things are now on Broadway with the avions and headphones and listening to and being able to dial in so many different things. And back then, were there spot monitors, or was there no monitors at all, and you just had to listen to everybody?
I think there were monitors. Those little monitors, and they put them on a mic stand, and that was it. You could just change the volume and stuff. But more specifically, to sub on people, like I'd be in the studio with Keller and Redsecker. I'd say, "You need any subs?" And it was just very casual. They, "Sure, why don't you come down and check it out?" It wasn't like I had to be put on a list and had to be cleared. It was more informal, and your friends would say, would ask to come down and check out your show, and they'd say, "Sure." And then I thought it was something I could do. Then I would, start learning it. And then, you tape it. You go back 1,000,000 times to hear every different version that the guy does, to see what is to be kept and what is not to be kept. What was something he was just doing that night. And, and then you go in for that first one. But it was just, it was still terrifying, for all the little things that there always are. As simple, and even as a simple the music was. But, you just you had to get yourself through it.
Back in the 70s, I remember how things used to be in New York City and Times Square and the danger. Were you doing any shows at all during the blackout of 1977?
Yeah, in fact, it was Grease. the lights went out, and they all just sat on the lip of the stage, and the piano player played, and the drums played, and they all held candles at the end, and they just sang they sang the rest of the songs from the show. I mean, because they wanted to give the audience their money's worth. I'd forgotten that. Thank you for plumbing it out of my head.
How long did you do tours before you decided to stay in New York and sub around on different shows here?
A lot. I did a lot of touring. But I liked it. And I felt really green and new to all this. So I figured this is happening for me. I did Anything Goes at Lincoln Center, and I was subbing for John Redsicker on there. And I did that a bunch of times too, and that worked out really well. And Red Press was the contractor. He knew me, and he knew I was subbing successfully over there. They had a great tour with Leslie Uggams of Anything Goes. And then I was going to be hired for another Grease tour by John Monaco, who was an older, he just recently passed away. He was a good guy. He was a contractor as well, did a lot of things. He asked me if I wanted to do Grease on the road, another tour of Grease. I said, sure, I'd love to. And I knew the conductor. And I said, great. And then later he calls me back and says, well, the conductor has asked for somebody else. I said, oh, okay. I thought you were giving this to me. He said, well, what can we do? So I had the sense to just say, okay, well, that's, I didn't give him a hard time. I knew to keep quiet. Then I heard that John Monaco was going to contract the first national tour of Chicago. So this was 1996. This was we're moving ahead now. But I said, well, John, that thing about Grease, I didn't get the Grease thing. I hear you're doing Chicago. I'd really love to do that because I'd seen the show and I liked it. He said, you got it. And he tried to make it up to me, which was very sweet. And that was it. And that I did for a long time. It was off and on because it would take breaks, but I did that over a period of 7 years. But then I would sub on Broadway for Ronnie. So basically, I've been doing this for 25 years now, and he's been doing it for maybe 26 years. But that's what I did. I subbed, and I did the tours, and that's how I sort of became known.
You've done so many musicals since the mid-'70s. If you were to give one piece of advice to someone about playing drums on Broadway, what's that one piece of advice that you'd give?
Be professional. Be cooperative and flexible with people, especially the conductor. Make sure that you're good for this gig. This specific gig. This is something you would be good at. And if not, don't do it. There were a couple of things I've done. I looked at it and I just didn't see how I could do it. I couldn't. It was just it wasn't musical to me. I mean, it was, but it was just a lot of odd meters and things that didn't make any sense. I think I'll never be able to do this correctly. So I passed. I passed on quite a few things.
Out of all the musicals that you've played, is there a favorite of yours?
Well, I would say, Grease for the first one and how corny and silly it was. But Dreamgirls for sure, because I always wanted to play R&B and play some funk music. And I got a chance to do that with a 26-piece orchestra with Red Press was in the band, Dave Gale, these guys who were like legendary, Bruce Bombasuto, and Maxine Roach was one of the violinists, Max's daughter.
When you were subbing at different places, you get notes as a drummer or any other musician that plays in a show. When somebody gave you notes for the first time, what did you do and how did you take it and how do you approach getting notes when you're subbing?
I mean, by now I know a lot more than I did then, clearly. And I think I was just so happy to be doing this kind of thing. I would say, sure, okay. I learned a lot from being at rehearsals in Chicago. When I did Chicago on the road, they would always have me at rehearsals. When the director would come into town, if we were on the road, he'd have rehearsals, he'd always have a piano player and they'd have me and drums. And watching him and listening to him, and he would say stuff like that, like, always take the last note that you got and keep that until someone tells you different. You just have to be as pleasant as you can be, and you have to take every note.
What advice would you give to someone that's interested in coming to New York City to play Broadway shows?
Study with someone reputable. Be professional. Be cooperative. And make sure that you're good for this gig. This is something you would be good at. And if not, don't do it. There were a couple of things I've done. I looked at it and I just didn't see how I could do it. I couldn't. It was just a lot of odd meters and things that didn't make any sense. I think I'll never be able to do this correctly. So I passed.
Out of all the musicals that you've played, is there a favorite of yours?
or someone that is recommended to you, or if you went to any kind of music school, do that and try to contact the drummers. I mean, I'm sure you got barraged with calls for subbing. I mean, what else can you do?
I know that you work at the union. Would you recommend somebody joining the union and getting the resources there to try to reach out to people?
Absolutely. I think the union directory book is one of the most valuable things you could have in your house. When I was studying in St. Louis with John Cassiga with the St. Louis Symphony, he would say, join the union as soon as you can. And I think I was already in at that point. I think I joined at 16. Or some other teacher told me, join the union and only do union work. You'll be better off and you'll have more money at the end. So absolutely, I think the union is the best thing you can do. You get a book of all the famous jazz musicians you ever heard of, and you can know where you can find out where they live, and they're in there with you. And there's plenty of resources for help at the union to get work, to get contracts, to get help. The main thing is for the union will help you if there's any problems. You're not getting paid if you're on a union contract. You're not getting paid, or your money was wrong. But yeah, I was always told as a kid by my teachers, always join the union.
I was first introduced to your photography when you were taking photos of people at Ain't Too Proud when we were in rehearsals. I was like, wow, this guy can take really cool photos. I was like, wow, this guy's great. So the whole photography thing, you're still doing that. You have a website called stevesingerphotography.com.
Why, yes, I do. And I do that too as a little side thing. I'll do headshots and photos for people. I did Joe Pissarro. I did John Miller, Frankie Centeno, Dave Noland. A lot of the guys that I've met on those shoots, I ended up doing shots for them. And I do love a lot of my actor friends, and I do headshots for them. It's fun. And I did a couple things where that I've had a few things published. Yeah, I had a couple things in the Times published. I have a picture of Steve Gadd that was on a cover of a magazine in Japan. That was cool. I got to meet Steve Gadd with this Japanese marimba player. I met her and she said, well, I told her I was a big fan of Steve Gadd's and I was a photographer as well. She said, well, could you take some pictures of our rehearsal? And it was with Eddie Gomez too. And I said, sure, I'd love to do that if I could meet Steve Gadd. She said, sure. And on a break, I sat and talked to Steve and Eddie for like 20 minutes. It was so great. And since then, I gave all those pictures to Steve Gadd's, publicity people as something to give back to him for all he's given to us,
You have Steve Singer Photography. You're subbing a lot at Chicago. Been there for a long time. Do you have any other projects that you're working on at the moment?
Well, I play for Dina Martin, who's Dean Martin's daughter. I play her act. Although we haven't done it for a while since COVID, but I think she's coming back maybe later this year. I have a couple of cabaret gigs coming up in April, but yeah, not much. I mean, I'm not doing much, but I'm doing a lot of Chicago though. I do maybe once, twice a week.
I guess stevesingerphotography.com, and that is the best way for someone to find out more about you.
Or they can contact me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook.
You on Twitter?
I am, but
TikTok.
I don't know. No.
That's for those kids, man. I'm still looking at TikTok. I'm like, I don't get it. It's not really for me. Well, you've done so much, and appreciate you sharing your years of experience and your insight on playing shows. I appreciate you taking time out. I know we've been working on this, trying to connect for a long time, and glad we did. And thank you for taking those pictures and actually being there at the very beginning and supporting Ain't Too Proud when we were in the workshop phase. I remember seeing you way back then. Well,
thanks for including me in this stellar cast of drummers. I don't really hold a candle to most of these guys, but I appreciate it.
That's why I have you on, because you have so much to share. And thank you very, very much, Steve Singer.
Thank you.
All right. We will talk soon.
All right. Thank you, man.
If you like what you hear on this show, subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter at BroadwayDrumming101.com. At this time, we have no advertisers, and we'd like to keep it that way. Our staff is small but growing. We can only produce a show with listener contributions from people like you. To continue producing the high-quality podcast you're listening to, publishing engaging newsletter content, and posting YouTube videos, we would appreciate any financial contributions you can make. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up to be a monthly or annual subscriber at BroadwayDrumming101.com. You can also contribute any amount you wish through PayPal at paypal.me/BroadwayDrumming101 or through Venmo at Broadway Drumming 101. Or help keep us caffeinated by buying us a cup of coffee or a week's worth at buymeacoffee.com/BD101. That's buymeacoffee.com/BD101. We appreciate any support you can give. Don't forget to subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page. You'll find more content that isn't featured on the podcast or on the Broadway Drumming 101 Instagram page. Make sure when you subscribe to the YouTube page, you click on the button to be notified when a new video is published. Be sure to visit our new shop at merchandise.broadwaydrumming101.com. Thanks again for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast.